Hello and welcome back to the J&Z podcast. Today, I have to say, Zeth has me watching one of the single most interesting movies I've ever seen in my life. So for further context, the movie we're talking about is Nothing But Trouble. It stars Chevy Chase in his most
Unbearable
lackluster
role.
performance. He makes a lot of quips in the movie, and they almost work sometimes. For how many there are, it's a pretty poor batting average, but he still ends up being one of the better parts of this movie. So you're in for a treat with this one.
Oh man, I think he is the worst part of the movie. I think he is unbearable.
I I had a hard time with most of the characters, to be fair.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, as in terms of him, he's so much of a narcissist and full of himself that I just can't stand him in this movie.
I could totally see that. It's just, but why did you recommend this movie? Oh, not recommend. Why did you want me to watch this again?
Because it's such a weird movie. Like, it quite literally is one of the least funny comedies you'll ever watch, but it's one of the most creative movies you'll ever watch at the same time. Like, there's so many creative ideas at play here.
It is a shame that it's just all gross out and stupid, lame jokes surrounding it.
Yeah, that's the only problem with this movie, but there's so many, like, what was Dan Aykroyd thinking making this movie?
I don't know, but if you go into the comment section, because you can watch this for free on YouTube, not that I recommend it, but it's because it's a free YouTube movie. Those go pretty well. If you went by off of what the comments say, you'd think this movie's a masterclass of film. And it is pretty telling though in 90% of the comments where I watched this when I was a kid and I was terrified, and that's the only reason I like it now. But like,
I just think it's like just a weird movie to show friends. Like, this isn't necessarily even one of my favorites or even a movie that I personally recommend. It's just kind of funny to like show friends, like, hey, check out this weird movie that has Chevy Chase and John Candy and Dan Aykroyd.
exactly, yeah. I will say there were some good characters in it. Did not start off particularly well though. To set the scene, our main character, Chevy Chase, he's not a banker. He wants to make that very clear, but he's a wealthy man. He runs an investment company or something. Things are going well, and he meets a young woman who wants to go to a city. They set up this whole plot line. It's not important at all. It gets thrown out pretty quickly. And then you also get to meet his extremely annoying Brazilian friends that will not shut up for the next 20 minutes of the movie.
Quite literally, the story gets going just because a woman wants to drive Chevy Chase's car, and Chevy Chase is like, "Well, I'll just drive to the location."
Yep,
And
that's it.
that's how the plot gets going.
It's a shockingly intricate beginning with well thought out backgrounds and destinations that never get brought up again. Quite literally, the best part of the movie. And then they show up. They take a little, which to be fair is really good life advice. Never take an off ramp in New Jersey, but um, they do, and they end up in this backwater town that's stuck 100 years in the past. And the poor guy rolls a stop sign. We've all been there. I personally have.
Vulcanvania.
Vulcanvania.
It's one
I
of the
cannot with this movie, man.
weirdest. Like I said, it's so weird.
That is so weird. And he runs a stop sign, and then the idiot, he goes on a high speed chase in his BMW, but the cop, on the other hand, he's got boosters to kick in for some reason. What a weird movie. I cannot believe the cops actually kind of like I actually kind of like him.
John Candy, I love in this movie, unsurprisingly enough. But
I
John
like I
Candy's
like his first appearance as the police officer. His other one I could do without.
oh no, I love it when he pulls over the four people that are drunk and like they're high and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Step out of the vehicle, sir," and he like puts him in the back of his truck, and he makes him do a breathalyzer test, and he's like, "Ah, you blew over the limit," and the guy takes out like a little pea, just like a little pea shooter, and then John Kennedy's like, "No, please, don't."
It was the original call an ambulance, but not for me. But you can see why nobody bothered with this version. But it was
Well,
very funny. I like
it
that.
it was because he's just like, "No, no, please don't anything but that," and then all of a sudden he pulls out like an Uzi and shoves it up his nose. Like that's just hilarious to me every time. That's like the
Yeah.
only joke though that makes me laugh. Everything else is like it's you're laughing more at just the weirdness that is presented in the movie rather than the actual punchlines of the joke.
It the whole setting is just so weird. It's
It is,
just
but it's creative.
weird.
Like it's such a creative house that because they get pulled over for the speeding ticket and stuff like that, and they're presented with the justice of the peace, who's this like 190-year-old man.
He's over 100 up. He's up there.
Yeah, and they have this house that's just full of booby traps and different things. Like they're sitting at a dining table one time, and then like a train pops out of the center of it. Like just a lot of creative stuff went into this movie. It's just sad that the movie as a whole is not very good.
No, it's terrible. And I think that I'm not as charmed. It had the potential to be charming, but it has to also be anything but what everything else was, like oh, what's a good example? Like E.T., for instance. E.T. is a fine movie. I don't get the hype personally, but it has charm to it, even if it's a little bit weird. It's an alien trying to go home. It actually, the movie itself reminded me a lot of like the series, a series of unfortunate events. The movie a little bit, but like the book series in particular. But in that series, like they're actually clever and the children are funny and the whatever his name was, everybody in that has personality. The problem for this movie is that almost every character is either just absolutely absurdly weird or has the most bland, boring, unfunny personality and lives up to every stereotype. And that's where the movie, I think, its creative direction gets very much so put to the wayside. On top of it being a very thin plot, I feel.
No, I agree with you totally where the story and the characters are not good. So that's why the movie in total isn't very good. The problem I'm having though is that the ideas of the movie are so creative though. Like a 190-year-old justice of the peace, and he just does whatever he wants to people that come into his path. So like for instance, there's these four groups of people that are high and they're drunk driving. And so he's like, "All right, goodbye." And then he punches a button and then all of a sudden out of their feet pops a chute into a roller coaster, and then it goes up, into this slope, and then it dumps the people out onto this thing that kills them all and crunches their bones. It's called the Bone Stripper, and you got like rock music. I think it was by the let me look up who did the music for that because that is actually like a real music group that did that.
And it's not like it's tame. And I think that's actually one of the points of the movie. Let me know when you get it though. Who wrote it? But I think okay,
Damn Yankees.
really.
Yeah, Damn Yankees did the Bone Stripper music. So when all of a sudden it's like revving up like, "Roar," and then all of a sudden it's like Bone Stripper, that's the Damn Yankees. So like I said, there's a lot of like cool things. It's just sad that like the entirety of the movie can't encompass that. And I think it's because of Dan Aykroyd. I don't know if you did any research on this movie,
Mm-mm.
but Dan Aykroyd, he's a pretty interesting character. Um believes in ghosts as well as aliens.
as they typically do.
Yeah, and so at this point in time, Dan Aykroyd was one of those comedic people that was a box office success, but he also had the ideas of a lot of the movies that he was in. So, you take, for example, The Blues Brothers or Ghostbusters or The Great Outdoors, a lot of these movies that were either box office smashes or they still made money back, like Spies Like Us as well.
Hmm.
And so Dan Aykroyd wrote this script of Nothing But Trouble. And I think he said that he presented it off of like some real life events of his, or something that happened to a cousin one time. And
This story sounds exactly like a story somebody would tell about what happened to his cousin one time.
uh,
That's just.
y- yeah, so it's just like it's like whatever, and everybody rejected it. Like he got the money to do it. The problem was no one wanted to direct it. So Dan Aykroyd's like, "All right, I'll direct it myself," and he hasn't directed a film since.
Maybe it's for the best. I don't know.
Well,
This was his magnum opus. You don't understand.
it was too
It's
over
like
budget.
Moonfall. But like think about it. Moonfall was rejected by every major studio that it was presented to. And that turned out to be a masterpiece. He simply just didn't have the determination and the creative genius of 15 moons flying through space, closing in on the Earth.
This movie has so many creative ideas from Dan Aykroyd, like the bone stripper, or the house, or the train coming out of the table, or the justice of the peace, or the setting of the house where there's like all these different switches and random thing, like there all of a sudden there's a bat part of the house with like a bunch of bat droppings. Like there's just like weird creative ideas. Same thing with like the diaper babies that are
Yeah, that
like
could have been
welders.
cut. They're his deformed children or grandchildren or something.
Yeah, so
Because they're
there's
so inbred that, like, it's ridiculous. It's truly ridiculous.
yeah, so you really need someone that came along, like Dan Aykroyd directed it and wrote the script, but you really needed someone to come around and say, Dan, why is this happening? You just needed that one person in his life to really question what was going on in the movie.
I do think that there is a fix for it, though. I think that the only way this movie could have been remembered better is if they up the scariness. Now, I despise scary movies. I hate watching them at all. But this movie's not scary enough. A lot of people said it's kind of creepy as a kid. They didn't like it. But if this movie presented itself to children more and then just scared the crap out of them, holy moly, would this be like it could be a little bit like how people view Coraline. Like I haven't seen it, but they're like, holy moly, that scared like they still remember it because of how much it scared them as a kid. If this was like reasonably popular and marketed a little bit different, but it was genuinely terrifying, but still enough for kids, people would remember it differently, and we could look back and be like, "Wow, that was a little, that was a little much." But it's not. It's just weird.
This definitely could be edited into a horror movie. But the problem is the gross out humor as well as the terrible one liners that Chevy Chase is trying to drop all the time. That's the only problem. So it would need a really heavy recut in order to make it more scary. Because, yeah, I'm with you where it's, if it was just edited a little differently, this could have been like almost a, I don't know, like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre almost.
It had that. The I don't. I just okay. I can't not for the life of me figure out who this movie's for. It's not for
Nobody.
children. Children don't like that. Adults don't like the weird, gross out humor. They don't like
It was for
weird
Dan
stuff.
Aykroyd and Dan Aykroyd alone.
This sounds like a movie you go to in the movie theater because you hear how bad it is and then you laugh at it. But you actually end up walking out just disappointed because it was just so weird that you have nothing to say about it. Because it was a whole lot of. It had a twist ending. Like it pulled an M. Night Shyamalan twist ending at the end, which is even better. I cannot believe this movie. This is awesome.
it definitely is weird, like how they get the entire government Like they just
Oh, don't
go to
even.
the White House. Like it shows like a shot of the White House, and they're like deploy the government troops, and so they deploy all the police there, and it ends up being
It's
the
the
police.
FBI.
Well, like everybody is in on it, and it makes no sense. Like he opens up the door, and the justice of the peace is acting like he doesn't know him, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hi there, folks," and it makes no sense. And then all of a sudden the house explodes at the end. It's like, what?
Because it was on the oil reserve. Because he blamed the bank for taking his land, and that's why he hates the bankers. It's a very deep plot, Zeth. You just simply don't have the intellect to understand. Shows like you know what I'm saying. Like you just don't have the brain power to understand the genius that is the guy's name that I already forgot because I was too grossed out by him taking off his hair and nose before he went to bed. I just cannot with this movie and his
Yeah,
leg.
yeah.
He lost to France. That's hilarious. He's a World War I vet from yeah. It's just that movie is ridiculous. The only one worth looking at is the policeman. He has a pretty good character arc. He does his job really well. I'll give him that. Like he's pretty good.
This was a big box office bomb, as you can imagine. But the only problem with that was its budget. Now, um,
You might be asking what budget? I watched this movie and it looked like it was made out of two shoestrings and a piece of nickel. Like I don't. But go on.
uh, it had his biggest budget up to that point.
Are you joking?
It was bigger. Okay, so put this into your mindset. He had Ghostbusters, Blues Brothers, The Great Outdoors. Um, he was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom for a little bit. 1941, Spies Like Us, and it had a bigger budget than all of those movies.
For what? The
It had,
bats?
I don't know, but Nothing But Trouble had a $45 million budget.
40. Give me 45 million. I'll make a worse movie. Well, I don't know. I've never made a movie, but it sure wouldn't look like that.
It only made 8 million, so it's even a bigger slap in the face.
They couldn't even afford the BMW with GPS.
I know, so I'm like,
That was
that's
crazy.
the reason it failed was because of the budget. I mean, obviously the movie's terrible, but I mean, up to this point, he was a star, and I mean, the cast of this is amazing. You have John Candy, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, and there's one more guest. The female, she was in a uh, I can't think of her name, but she is a big hot actress at that time. I think she was in Ghost. I
You're, you're,
always forget her name.
you're forgetting someone.
Who?
Tupac was in this movie for
Oh my
some
goodness,
reason.
Tupac.
You forgot the whole scene. That they literally it's the hip hop. What's their name? What's the group's name? It
I
was back
don't
then.
know. I just remember
Crud.
Tupac is
It's
making
the
his
underground something.
debut.
Anyways, they get caught speeding in the area, and he brings them all in. They're like, "All right, come on in. You're speeding. What you got?" And he learns they're musicians, and so they start playing hip hop music, correct? And first it looks like he's just gonna be some old boomer who's like, "Oh, I don't like hip hop." But no, he starts jamming out on the organ, and he's really good, and he's so impressed. Like this man murders people, like, and it goes on about his breakfast like it's nothing, and he just lets him go, which was actually that scene was actually kind of fun for once. Like that scene, and then the immediate one after where he's talking to him about marrying his granddaughter. Like those specific moments from the movie were actually kind of fun.
Okay, so the granddaughter character, guess who that is?
I know who it is. I referenced it
That
earlier.
that's John Candy dressing as a woman.
That's his second appearance, which explains why she was mute. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just
And don't
oh
tell me it's
man.
because of the budget, but like, come on. I
I don't know, but it's just weird.
It's so weird. But I did like seeing Tupac and all of them. That was actually really fun. If that was probably the best part of the movie, I must say.
Tupac.
He's just wondering what happened. Like
It's
it's
like
just
a full-blown music video. It's not like they jam out for like 1 minute. It's quite literally like a 3-minute scene.
yeah, no, it's great. And then they help out with the wedding after. And
Yeah, and then when they get married, he's like, "All right, see ya. I had difficulties with my first marriage," and he just walks out.
yeah. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I'm sure I'm forgetting even more stuff about this movie. It's just absolutely insane. I can't believe that this actually was put to theaters, but at the same time, the movie theater needs something like this to remind them to go with the straight and narrow, to go with the proven, don't make anything innovative because remember what happened to what's this movie's name?
Nothing but trouble.
Yeah, cuz if you do, it's nothing but trouble.
Leave it to Jace to always forget our movie titles.
Leave it to the movie to be so weird that it's the least memorable thing about it.